on TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 6.
Good evening, I'm Zora Suleiman. Talk TV and The Sun will be hosting a Conservative leadership debate between the two frontrunners Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss next week. You can watch The Sun showdown, The Fight for Number 10, hosted by Talk TV's political editor Kate McCann and The Sun's political editor Harry Cole, right here from 6 p.m. next Tuesday. The RMT has confirmed that next week's planned rail strike will go ahead. 40,000 workers at Network Rail and 14 train companies will walk out next Wednesday after talks failed. The union Unison says staff at exam board AQA are to stage a 72-hour walkout that could affect the delivery of thousands of GCSE and A-level results. Meanwhile, the Unite Union is going to launch a legal challenge against the government over a new law that allows employers to use agency staff to replace striking workers. French police have blamed an unexpected technical incident for the delays of up to 6 hours at the port of Dover. Earlier, the port's CEO blamed the French. Talk TV's Ollie Whitfield-Miocic is live for us in Dover. Ollie, what's the latest?
Zora, to the relief of residents here in Dover, the local roads have certainly become less snarled up, but we understand that there is still severe congestion on parts of the M20 and the M3 following some collisions earlier on. This huge blame game has now erupted, with both sides of the channel blaming each other for what happened this morning. We understand now that the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is holding talks with her counterpart in Paris.
Ollie, thank you. A deal to unblock Ukrainian grain exports through the Black Sea has been reached. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says the deal will help ease the global food crisis caused by the war in Ukraine.
The question has not been what is good for one side or the other. The focus has been on what matters most for the people of our world. And let there be no doubt, this is an agreement for the world. It will bring relief for developing countries on the edge of bankruptcy and the most vulnerable people on the edge of famine.
And US President Joe Biden's COVID symptoms have improved after he tested positive for the virus yesterday. His doctor also added that Biden is responding well to treatment. The 79-year-old is double vaccinated and has had 2 boosters. Well, those are the latest news headlines. Still to come, your TalkSport update, but first your weather with Nazanin Gaffer.
The Sunday Times Wine Club sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello. Well, what a week of weather we've had, starting off with dangerously high temperatures at the start of the week, record-breaking in fact. And then today, well, it has been rather cloudy, dull and damp for many places, with thundery downpours, and temperatures have returned back to normal, but it has actually been the coolest day of the week. Now, as we head into tonight, we're still going to continue with a bit of that wet weather. Thundery downpours likely across parts of Wales, West Midlands, down towards the West Country. Everywhere else, showery outbreaks of rain moving northeastwards up towards parts of southern Scotland and northeast England by dawn. Then by dawn as well, we get wet and windy conditions spreading in from the west. And that means for tomorrow, we are going to see that wet and windy weather across much of Northern Ireland, and it will edge its way further eastwards across parts of Scotland and the north and west of England and Wales. Whereas further south and east, bright, fine and warm, and the same conditions are expected on Sunday as well. And finally, a Smokenado fire whirl was seen in Somervell County, Texas this week as efforts to suppress the Chalk Mountain fire continued. On Wednesday, local media reported that the fire destroyed at least 16 homes and damaged 5 others as critical fire weather continued to exacerbate wildfires throughout the state. Official reports yesterday said the fire is now 10% contained.
The Sunday Times Wine Club sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello again. Formula One and the Ferraris of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc have set the pace in practice for this weekend's French Grand Prix. Sainz was fastest in second practice with teammate Leclerc second. Sainz will take a 10-place grid penalty for taking extra engine parts for Sunday's race. Brighton have rejected a £30 million bid by Man City for defender Marc Cucurella. The 24-year-old Spanish international only joined Brighton last summer on a 5-year contract. Great Britain's Dina Asher-Smith dedicated her 200-metre world bronze title to her late grandma. The 26-year-old, who overcame a disappointing fourth-place performance in the 100 metres, said she had to fight to overcome her grief after losing her nan in May. And rugby union's governing body, the RFU, will vote next week on whether to adopt new rules around transgender players. A recommendation has been made to only allow those assigned as female at birth to play in the women's game. Well, that's all for now. I'll be back with more in half an hour.
Why do you think shouting loudly throughout their interviews is doing any service to people?
99% of the time, I'm actually stood silent. No, after it's not brilliant.
Liar!
You can shout as much as you like.
That's the point, Steve.
Good afternoon. It is 6:05. This is Talk TV live from the Talk Radio studios, and I'm going to be with you to 7 o'clock. We are now going to jump over the pond to our very own Professor John Christopher Bew, our own Prof JC, White House correspondent at Real Political News. Firstly, we should always really start our exchange today by asking how President Biden is. We just heard the news moments ago that, according to his doctors, he's improved somewhat. Is that as you understand it as well?
Yes, I do understand it that way. I'm getting reports from the White House, and he's certainly on the mend. He's doing rather well, and he will get through this. The projection is that he's going to be fine. He's in good shape, and he's slim and athletic, and he's wonderful. So we look forward to him. I'm looking forward to seeing him at the White House soon.
Yeah, well, we certainly wish him all the very best and a speedy recovery. You know, it's pretty much the toughest job in the world to be chief executive of the most powerful nation in the world. And a lot of people have now, not just on the right, but on the left, been a little bit troubled and concerned by his age and what appears on the face of it in a number of instances to look like what you might describe as some version of cognitive decline. Is that a view that's just of the right, or are you as a citizen concerned when he does return to health about his capacity really to lead as the CEO of the most important nation on the planet?
Yes, that's interesting. Now, I've known Joe Biden going on 30 years. And to tell you the truth, I live very closely to where he lived as vice president. In fact, every morning, the vice president's house, it's also known as the Naval Observatory, plays the Star Spangled Banner at 8 o'clock in the morning. And it makes me feel good about this country. And I think Joe Biden and I have talked about this when he lived nearby. And it's, by the way, right next to the British Embassy. And it's inspiring. And I have to say, I've known Joe Biden for many years. I don't think he's changed very much at all. He's had a little stammer issue, but he's come public with that, and he's used that to his advantage. So, we're all bullish for Joe. So let's see if he can pull this through, and I think he can. It's a tough time. It is a tough job.
Sure. You remember the Reagan debate. I think it was against Walter Mondale, when he was standing there and he said, listen, I will not make age any part of this election. I will not use my opponent's youth and inexperience against him. That was a pretty good line, right?
I love Joe. I love Ronald Reagan. I'm a Democrat, but when I teach my classes, I think of him in his brown suits, and I think he says things like, I knew George Washington. George Washington was a friend of mine. Ronald Reagan, especially now, seems so charming and so wonderful. And I even like his old movies again.
The Gipper or the Kipper. Yeah.
The Gipper.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, it was a different time, a different generation. We've talked about this before, where there was much more bipartisanship. Scalia, a judge of the right, voted 99 pretty much to I think 1, because the one senator didn't show up. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, an arch defendant of women's right to choose, 93-7. That's unthinkable now. And we are at a time at the greatest, I think, political polarization pretty much in American history, I suspect arguably since the Civil War, not least expressed by what's happening in the January 6th commission. The latest we heard was that at the time of the insurrection, as those were invading the Capitol, the people closest to ex-President Trump say that he was watching the television. How has that been reported over there, and what's your response?
I think you could have. You just said it. That's exactly how it's being reported. And his senior staff, his own family, is saying that he was in fact watching TV. And he after telling them and bringing them all, say it's going to be wild, come to Washington. He goes out on the ellipse in the South Lawn and he says, we're going to go to the Capitol. We're going to march. And he didn't go, although he wanted to go. And there's stories about that. And he basically hung Mike Pence out to dry. Mm-hmm. And Mike Pence, because he was frightened of the what the Secret Service was doing, didn't get in the Secret Service car. And Trump said he turned me down. He turned Pence. He did me in, basically. And this is the vice president then had to take control because as General Milley, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said he never heard from the president. He never heard any initiative to put the National Guard or any military or the Capitol Police in charge. And as I watched this happen live, Rob, on TV, I thought, where's the Army? Where's the active duty Army? Where's and they weren't there because Trump didn't want them there because it would not have helped his whole master plan of taking over the country by force.
You know, it's interesting to kind of watch the response. This is not a bipartisan commission. There are some members of the Republican Party. Obviously, it's led by Liz Cheney, who comes from a political dynasty, one that is definitely not popular in the Democratic Party when you think about Dick Cheney, vice president to George W. Bush. But she has nevertheless, arguably, you may say, with I suppose one might describe it as a sense of patriotic mission, along with some Republicans joined this commission. But there's also a lot of loud noise from the Republican Party, even in the face of this evidence. And I wonder whether or not that's still the case, or as the evidence emerges and it looks worse and worse for President Trump in terms of him not stopping those who were seeking to overturn a legitimate election, whether or not there are some members of the GOP, the Republican Party, are now regretting not being members of that commission or not.
Well, we call it a committee, actually. So the hearing is a
committee, yes,
bipartisan committee. Yeah. I know you love technicalities, and you're a lawyer.
I do.
So,
no, it's important.
So here's what I'm feeling, and I have to go with my feelings.
Sure.
And I'm hearing, and I watched. I know you probably were up till 3:30 in the morning watching this last night.
I have been watching it. Yeah.
You're a glutton for punishment, but you look great even though you're up all night. I don't know about myself. However, Liz Cheney is a stalwart, and she's an American hero, and she really praised the young women who were on this, who the witnesses from all sorts of, from the White House, the Cassidy Hutchinson and the Sarah Matthews, and she said these young women are really inspirational to women and to girls in America. And I almost lost it hearing her say that, because Darth Vader, as he was known, Dick Cheney, God bless him, we see his offspring, and Liz Cheney is a superb. And you know what? She is superb, but she may lose in her primary coming November or even before November. And that's the sacrifice she's making to support what she believes is the Constitution. And the two individuals who were up there, Adam Kinzinger and Elaine Luria, Luria.
Yeah,
they are veterans. Elaine spent years on the deck of a ship, and Kinzinger is very much involved in the military. And he took the oath of office to the Constitution and not to an individual like Donald J. Trump, which many have. This is all coming up. But remember always, Rob, you know American politics. It's really not necessarily the extreme MAGA people who may or may not turn out. Some, I think, believe in him as if they deified him. They're his disciples. But I really believe it's the independents who were saying, well, I voted for Trump last time because it really wasn't so crazy about Joe. But in the meantime, we will see who turns out. But the things that must happen is the vote must get out, people must register, and the Democrats must get out the vote to elect, to keep Congress, because if they don't, then Joe Biden, no matter what kind of shape he's in, I think it'll be good shape, will have a lame duck term in office. And
as we think about it, right? I mean, you wonder what sort of alchemy it takes to kill the next presidential run by Donald J. Trump. He's all but announced that he's going to go again, and he still has pretty much a great deal of political capital and followers. He even has kind of access to, his own network right now with millions of followers, millions of Trumpistas, so to speak. The only thing that stops him is a credible alternative that can win the GOP nomination. The difficulty is that anybody that faces Donald J. Trump, it's going to be, as it always was, as it was before, it's going to be an ugly fight. And the runners and riders, as you know, we've got a leadership election here. We're going to have a new prime minister soon. Looking at the landscape, the leading figures that can win look like perhaps Ron DeSantis from Florida, who I know you don't personally like, or perhaps a little bit of a curveball. There was some suggestion that Tucker Carlson from Fox News might run. Who do you think is going to be the next GOP nominee, and who beats Donald Trump to that nomination?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump has really damaged himself. I'm saying himself because he's kind of a dual personality. This way.
He's two personalities. Enough about me. What do you think of me? I think that's the personality.
Yes, exactly. He is damaging himself, and the fact is, even during this, he's calling people to see if they'll turn around the election in their states. He's damaging himself. He's walking all over the place, and he's looking like a tempestuous baby and a wannabe dictator. And you know what? Not all people are stupid. I believe in the dumbing down of America, and perhaps we've talked about this. But I think when people see this, those who do see it, although on some stations it's not even played, they will see, well, wait a minute. How did we survive 4 years?
Right, I've got that, Prof. JC, but it's it's a prediction. I'm not asking you to look into your crystal ball, but boy, and I mean this, you not just stumbled on some good lighting, but you go back. I mean, you remember your first political campaigns, which were a little bit before I were born. With all of this lived experience, as we call it nowadays, who do you think is going to get that nomination and face off against possibly a very aging Biden at the next election?
Well, you've got Nikki Haley, you've got Mike Pompeo, you've got DeSantis, as you mentioned, and you've got Mike Pence, who is now the darling of the Republicans because he stood up and he showed that he has we won't use the word in Hebrew, so we'll say the chutzpah or the whatever you want to say.
Cojones.
And he showed that he had it. And he was, in fact, running the show to the point where Trump is saying, he's not the president, I am. Don't listen to him. I mean, talk about tempestuous crybaby.
Well, I have to say that does sound to me like an interesting deck of cards. And if you're listening to Prof. JC, Professor John Christopher Beer, White House correspondent at Real Political News, any one of those people, if you're thinking of putting money on who's going to be the next president, I have to say I suspect it's going to be one of those four as well. We will see. My money, I've got to tell you, Prof. JC, is on Nikki Haley, but we will discuss that another time. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. That was Prof. JC. You're listening to me on Talk TV live from the Talk Radio studios.